Welcome to Beat Diabetes, and we're going to be looking again at my book, 60 Ways to Lower Your Blood Sugar. I started a series way back in around June or July of last year. I call it my Books and Quotes series. We've looked at a number of different books, and once in a while Benedicta says, you ought to just review your own book. And so I did. And this book, as I mentioned last time, was written in 2012. So 12 years ago, a long time ago, and some of my thinking has changed since then. Most of the foundations are right on, and they're right there where they should be as far as I'm concerned. Obviously, it's good to agree with yourself, but there are other cases where I probably wasn't as extreme as I am now. This, I guess you could say, is a kinder, gentler approach, 60 ways to lower your blood sugar, than I take these days. I'm more vicious in terms of cutting your carbs, cutting your snacks, and so forth. And you might say, well, Dennis, kind and gentle is good. And it is. When it comes to your personality, that's exactly where you want to be, a kind, gentle person. But when it comes to beating diabetes, this vicious monster of an enemy that's attacking your life, probably you don't want to be too kind or too gentle with diabetes. Anyway, I was looking at it some more, and I thought, well, let me just share some of the sidebars, some of the little areas on the side of the pages where they marked out especially important things for people to see. As I recall, it's been a long time, but I think the publisher did that. I don't think this was something that I had established, but they just found some quotes they thought were worth highlighting. So let me just read a few of them. And again, when I look at this, I see that in a lot of ways, I'm not much different than I was then, apart from the fact that I just go a little further than I did then. But I had the foundations down. The roots of how to beat diabetes, the foundations, the fundamentals are all in this book. So it's not a bad book at all, but it just doesn't go quite as far as I would today if I were writing this today. So let's look at it. One of the sidebars says this: the simple truth is that cereals, now I'm talking about breakfast cereals here, cereals are made from some type of grain. There are no beef or chicken cereals, nor are there any cereals I know made from cucumbers or green peppers, and this makes them a problem. That's right. And I say this as someone who has loved cereal since I was a small child. Cereal was my big go-to breakfast, and sometimes it was my snack. Just always loved it. And still do. I do eat some keto cereals, and I make my own keto cereals out of some nuts and unsweetened coconut and different things. So it's not that I don't eat any cereal, but I don't eat the normal cereals. You go to the grocery store, and they'll usually have an entire row, maybe both sides, filled with one box of cereal after another, one brand after another. You've got the super sweet, super artificial with all the weird colors type cereal, and then you've got the more natural ones like Mueslix and Raisin Bran and Oat Bran cereal and different kinds. But there's not a one of them that's really much good unless you just eat it in a tiny little portion. Like I said, there are keto cereals. The problem is they are expensive. Whereas you can buy a normal box of cereal for $3.50 or $3, the keto cereals run about $8. So number one, it's barely affordable for most people. And number two, they've got a lot of iffy ingredients, but my meter tells me I can get by with some of them, not all of them. And so a lot of times I'll have a keto cereal, or I'll throw in a little bit of keto cereal and put in a few nuts and a little unsweetened coconut. But it'll just be like about a third of a bowl. And it's just for something to eat after dinner to have with my coffee. So anyway, there are no cucumber cereals, and I doubt there ever will be. And because they're made from grains, that's a problem. Anything that's got grain involved is a problem. Oatmeal's a problem. Why? Because it comes from a grain. And so many things. Quinoa is a problem. It comes from a grain. All these things that come from grains are a problem and should set off the red flags and the warning bells. Clang, clang, clang. All right, here's another quote that I make, this one about Jenny Rule. I write in her great book, Blood Sugar 101, and I really would encourage you to get it. It's excellent. Doesn't maybe agree with me 100%, but boy, it's close. And she's a pretty sharp gal. She, like me, is not a doctor. She's a diabetic, but she has studied this thing like crazy. And Dr. Bernstein actually wrote a foreword for one of her books. So, if she's got Dr. Bernstein on her side, she must be doing some things right. Anyway, the quote says in her book, Blood Sugar 101, Ginny Rule advises people to eat to your meter. Let me say that again, eat to your meter, meaning you should allow your blood sugar meter to dictate what foods and meals are acceptable for you and which ones to avoid. And like me, she emphasizes the post-meal test or postprandial test. In other words, find out where you are before you eat. Wait about an hour to an hour and a half, and then after you eat, that is, and then test yourself again. See how high your blood sugar rose, and let that dictate whether that food or that meal is acceptable or unacceptable. Eat to your meter. Eat to please your meter, and you can hardly go wrong. And there'll be some things everybody and their mama told you are healthy for you, good for you, nutritious. They're a superfood. They're a mega food. They're bursting with nutritious. And yet your meter will tell you, doesn't work. Ignore what everybody's been telling you. Superfood, schmooper food. Eat to your meter. And if your meter condemns that food, you condemn it and have nothing to do with it. That's been my philosophy, and it's done me very, very well in my life. Been doing it over 20 years now. All right, another quote. The good news is that what comes up can also come down. Well, that's a good thought. By limiting your carbs, exercising, and avoiding so much snacking, you can give your overworked pancreas and blood sugar mechanism some rest, and they will express their gratitude by gradually lowering your blood sugar levels overall and your fasting blood sugar as well, and of course your A1C. So, what comes up can go down. What I said was limiting your carbs, amen, and avoiding so much snacking and doing some exercise. Well, today I would say just don't snack. Just don't snack. Have 2 meals. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a snack type food as long as it's a keto snack, but eat it right at the end of your meal. That's what I do. So there are times I'll have a keto dessert, but I won't have my meal at 6:30 p.m. or 7 and then wait until 10 p.m. and have a little keto dessert or some type of a keto snack. If I want a keto dessert or a keto snack, I'll have it hard on the heels of my meal so my body can deal with and process the whatever carbs are involved, and then I can just rest. So what comes up can go down. Here's a thought about those, especially for those of you that need to lose some weight, and losing weight is not insignificant. I know most of us in the keto world don't focus on losing weight. We focus on lowering blood sugar and lowering insulin levels. But weight is not insignificant, and if you are significantly overweight, that can be a problem. And so you don't want to stay that way. Here's what I say about this. This is in a little small chapter. All these chapters are tiny. I think that's one reason this book did so well. People like small chapters sometimes, and they all basically stand on their own. You don't really have to read these sequentially at all. So this little chapter is about the one portion rule. And here's what I say. Our eyes generally have a pretty good idea of how much food we should take, but our eyes have an adversary, our stomachs. What seemed good and reasonable to our eyes seems pathetically small to our stomachs. And far too often, our stomachs overrule our eyes, and we yield, and we pack in the calories and the carbs. What I'm talking about is this. A lot of times you have your plate and you say, all right, well, I want a reasonable meal. I don't want to stuff myself. I don't want to pig out. So you take what seems appropriate. Take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You fill your plate with low-carb items, relatively low-carb or very low-carb. And according to your eyes, that should be sufficient for your meal. But then you finish that meal and you say, well, I could use a little more of this or a little more of that. I'm not quite full. And so your eyes have just been overruled by your stomach. Your eyes said, that's a perfectly adequate meal for me. I don't need anything further than what's on this plate. But then you go to the second portion. So for those of you that are really struggling to lose weight, if you just avoid the second portion, take whatever seems appropriate on your plate first time around, and as soon as that plate is clean and there's no more food left on the plate, lock up your lips and don't eat anything further until the next meal. That'll help you a great deal. A lot of our calories and a lot of our weight comes from the second helping. I want a second helping of this, and I'm just not quite full. I need a little more of that. Again, don't skimp on the first helping. Go ahead and take what's necessary and good and should be filling, but don't go to the second helping. All right, another quote. And this, I've been saying this all along, so this is not really new, but it's about fruit juice. It says juice does not get a free pass just because it contains natural, in quotations, sugar. And of course, what it is, juices have concentrated sugar. They don't just squeeze an orange or squeeze some cherries or squeeze this or squeeze that and they give you that. They squeeze it and they evaporate a lot of the liquid out of it and squeeze it some more. You get concentrated juice, concentrated sugar. So juice doesn't get a free pass just because it's natural. When it comes to sugar, your body will pay the same price whether you get it from an orange juice or a Dr. Pepper. Admittedly, fruit juice has more vitamins than soda, but you can easily get your vitamins from vegetables that are not going to overload you with nasty pancreas-exhausting sugar. So avoid fruit juice. It's really one of the worst offenders, and the reason that makes it even worse than it normally would be, and it's bad enough as it is, but the thing that makes it so terrible and nasty and deceiving is we assume it's healthy for us. It's good old orange-colored orange juice. It's grape juice. It's made from fruits. It's perfect. No, it's not. If you don't believe that, test yourself after drinking some. I did a video on grape juice versus a soda, and the grape juice raised my blood sugar higher than the soda did. All right, another quote. Carb-wise, is talking about fruits. Carb-wise, the worst fruits of all are the dried fruits. With these, the water has been mostly evaporated, but the sugar remains. Sugar doesn't evaporate, but water does. And since they're smaller in size, you get the impression you can eat quite a lot of them without really eating too much. What you are ingesting primarily is sugar, sugar, and more sugar. 1 cup of dried figs is 130 grams of carbs. Whoa! 1 cup of dried figs, 130 grams. That's like about 4 candy bars. A cup of prunes, which are dried plums, contains around 106 grams. That's about 3 candy bars. And a cup of raisins has 130 grams. So dried fruit, most fruit is bad anyway. Dried fruit is the absolute worst. Once in a while, somebody will ask me a question, well, can diabetics have dates or figs or things? And I'm like, no, that's about as bad as you can get. You might as well go out and buy yourself a couple of candy bars. All right, one more quote. There are folks who are going through each day eating far too many carbs, forcing their pancreases to put out way too much insulin, something I've been saying all along, haven't changed my mind about that for sure. Their bodies are becoming walking time bombs. That's a sad thought. You could be a walking time bomb with all the carbs and sugars and the high glucose and the high insulin. They're filled to the gills with insulin, which is doing tremendous damage all by itself, even though their numbers may not reflect it yet. The doctor checks their blood sugar. In the morning, it reads 98, and he says they're fine. In fact, they are not fine. And that was my problem for quite some time. And I would go to the doctor and say, oh, you're okay. One doctor gave me an A1C. I didn't know what an A1C was, but he told me, well, it's kind of an average of how your blood sugar's been. And so I went back a little bit nervous to the doctor to find out what he had to say. And he said, no, it's fine. It wasn't fine. I was having all kinds of problems from high insulin surges, and my glucose was bouncing up and down. And the thing about bouncing glucose is when you're bouncing high and then dropping low and bouncing high and dropping low, your average isn't really too bad because you're high about half the time and you're low about half the time. So your average may look pretty good. And if the doctor just gives you an A1C, it may not reflect that you've got real problems. So you got to be careful. And that's why a low spike diet is good for everybody. It's not just good for raging diabetics. It's really good for anybody. And I was having health issues I now know are related to blood sugar and bouncing, spiking glucose and plummeting glucose and spiking and plummeting. I was having those issues and problems and the corresponding symptoms even in my 20s. Not a good situation. Thank God for knowledge. You know, when you don't know what's going on, all you know is something seems to be wrong. Something's a little off with the way I feel these days, but you don't have a clue what it is. But when you understand it and you can do something about it, it feels so much better. All right, well, that's from this book, 60 Ways to Lower Your Blood Sugar. It is on Amazon. I'll leave a link. It's a good book, just doesn't quite reflect the seriousness with which I take my diet these days and my eating patterns these days. I'm a little tougher on myself. You might think as you get old, you'd kind of ease up on the gas, but I find that the older I get, the more I put that gas pedal to the floor, just determined that when I pass from this world, and I will, and you will, and everybody else will, I don't want it to be from high blood sugar. I don't want it to be from diabetic problems. I don't want them to say about my death, he died of diabetic issues. Let it be something else, but not diabetes, not high glucose, and not high insulin. I want you to know that I have another YouTube channel. It's called by my name, Dennis Pollock, and on this channel, my wife Benedicta and I teach the basics of the Bible in a simple, user-friendly fashion. Normally, on Mondays, I post what I call a video devo, in which I take various Bible topics and share scriptures to help you understand the subject a little better. On Thursdays, I post Bible studies by Benedicta and me as we sit at our dining room table and discuss various portions of the scriptures. We cover book studies and Bible character studies. So catch me on Mondays sharing devotional talks, and Benedicta and me on Thursdays as we study the greatest book in the world, the Bible. Check in the description to find a link to our Bible teaching channel, which is called by my name, Dennis Pollock.